Hi, everyone. It's another beautiful day right after the holidays. We're so glad to be back with you. I hope all of you had a good holiday season, as did we. Of course, always busy, right? But here we are starting a new year and back with our show, starting, I think, on a very good foot. Today, we are really happy to welcome Mike and Lacie. Mike and Lacie from Mike the Fit Farmer. There you go. Hi, Mike and Lacie.
Hey, how
Hey.
you doing, Maureen?
I'm pretty good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing pretty good. Trying to stay warm at this time of year.
Yep, me too. Me too. I'm sure that many of our listeners are acquainted with you. Many probably subscribe. Um, and if not, people, go ahead, check out Mike the Fit Farmer, check out the YouTube channel. But Mike and Lacie, I've had the pleasure of attending and participating and speaking in many events that you are part of as well, including your own event last fall, the Homesteaders Jamboree, which was fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I really loved it. That was definitely one of my favorites. Absolutely one of my favorites. But hopefully, after this interview, for those of you who have not gone and checked them out prior to now, you'll be motivated to do so. So, Mike and Lacie Dickson from North Carolina, we want to welcome you to our show. And there you are. The first thing that I want to do is get into a little bit of your background. I love to hear your story.
Oh.
Well, I love you guys, and your story just kind of warms my heart.
Oh,
You,
we love you too.
yeah, actually, Mike has spoken for us also several times at some of our own events. So we are really happy to have you. And why don't you start by telling a little bit about yourselves and how you came to be homesteaders. And before you start, let me just say, my family and I homesteaded for 27 years straight, and now we're doing so on a much smaller scale in Virginia, where I'm not allowed to have a cow or goats, but I have and do everything I possibly can. But it has become such a popular thing in this country, and the movement is growing and growing, which was not the case when we were homesteading. We were the crazy ones. So I love that you guys have helped to make it more mainstream. But it is a really important thing to talk about because there's so much value on many levels. And we're going to talk about some things that people are automatically going to think, oh, yeah, it would be wonderful to grow your own food or do this or do that. But there are other aspects of it as well that are equally beneficial. So let's start by talking a little bit about your background.
All right. Well, first off, specifically, I didn't grow up with a homesteading background. I didn't have parents and even grandparents that weren't into homesteading. I lived the stereotypical American lifestyle growing up, eating the sad American diet, eating just a diet full of sugar. Oh, I would have for breakfast frosted flakes, and then I would add sugar to those frosted flakes, and then have some Pop Tarts with that.
Oh,
And just,
no.
man, it was just a sugar laden diet, and it was just I was on a track to having diabetes for sure with that lifestyle. One of the things is though, even though I had that lifestyle, I always enjoyed being active and working out and sports. So with as I was growing up, I got into those things, and then eventually led me to being into bodybuilding. And bodybuilding is what actually led me to. There we go. There's Lacie.
I didn't mean to put that up.
And then bodybuilding is actually what led me to eating better. One of the things that I began to learn is that if I wanted my body to look better and to feel better, I actually had to start eating differently.
Yeah.
Who would think that? But as I started doing that, I began to see the importance of food in my diet and just changing the way that I ate more cleaner, nutrient dense foods. And around that time with my journey is also around the time that I met my wife, at the time girlfriend, and we shared interests together. We went to the gym together. We were both on the same track of eating clean and things like that. And with that, I'll let you share your part of that.
Well,
Well,
let me just say before you tell your part that here you are bodybuilding, Lacie.
I
Full
was.
on bodybuilding.
I was building Hezekiah in there. That's right.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I mean, like Mike, I grew up eating all the Doritos and all of that stuff. But on a different side of that is that I grew up beside my mom's parents. So one set of my grandparents, and my grandfather always had a big garden. There you
Sorry,
go. Good
phone
job.
fell down.
And like we had blueberry bushes and fig trees, and we canned, and we did all that. I mean, in the summertime I had to string a big bucket of green beans before I could go play.
Oh, yeah.
And so I did grow up having that fresh food and all. So that's where like we differed a little bit. And but even with that, like I was always the fat kid, right? Like it wasn't until later that I really started losing weight. And actually it was after I graduated high school. I was like, this was like my mindset. I want to wear a bikini in the summertime. That's what I wanted to do. And
that's cool.
so I started going to the gym and working out and, changing what I ate. And I really became a little addicted to running too at that time. And, yeah, and then I went to massage school because I was interested in that. And right after I graduated massage school is when I met Mike. So both of us were, in the gym separately before we met. And then whenever we started dating, we started going to the gym together. And that was kind of like where our journey kind of came together. And then we got married and we're buying a house. And I said, I want to have a garden. Like that's what I want. I remember growing tomatoes and all these things, and I wanted to do that too. So we found a house in the city where we could actually have a small garden.
Yeah, and at that time we were both wanting in our first house. I'd never had a garden at all before, and I was like, we're gonna have a garden, our first home together, marriage, life starting together. I'm gonna grow this garden. So we bought our first house in town. I started ripping out all the ornamental plants and andinas and all that, the holly bushes, and instead I put tomato plants in the front yard. We were the only weirdos in our neighborhood growing tomatoes and corn and eggplant and squash in our front yard. You could definitely point our house out. And then I'd cut up the gutters where I could set up rain barrels, and we were collecting water to water those plants in the front yard. And I was trying to do some companion planting there with some marigolds with the tomatoes. And yeah, we were definitely going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, changing our way of life. And around here I set up some raised beds around the trees.
Those are dogwood trees.
I was experimenting with growing lettuce around the dogwood trees there. And we were going to town with trying to just dive deeper in this lifestyle, and we were just changing our life completely, getting rid of the soft drinks, all the sodas, all the sugar, all the processed food. And because one of the things that I was thinking during my bodybuilding journey, I was like, all right, I'm eating better, I'm cleaning up my diet. The best way to know the story behind what we are putting in our bodies is to actually start growing it ourselves. So we started as we were doing there. And then when we started having children, and we had our first child, Selah, while living in that house, and it hit me even more. It's like, man, I really want to keep taking this seriously because I want to know what we're putting in her body, our children's body as well. So yeah, we were pretty serious about it.
Good. Having children does have a tendency to make us really think and focus on what is really important. And it had that effect on me when I had Erin. When I was pregnant with her, I was really starting to think about what does the future hold? How are we going to live? How should we eat? Me too, just like you. I'm thinking those thoughts. So yeah, that was a long time ago, Mike and Lacie.
Yeah, that was let's see, when we started that garden there, that's probably about 15 years or so ago.
Yeah.
And I still remember one of the things that my goal as a parent with our children was since I didn't have this lifestyle growing up, I wanted to instill that in them right away. So when Sayla was little, I don't even think she was 1 yet. We were having her sitting around the table, starting seeds with us, and then as she got older, we had her outside with us, helping us to harvest food, and she's been a part of all of them have been a
Like,
part of it since the day they were pretty much
yeah,
born. Yeah, that's the
like,
picture there.
none of our kids know any different. They don't know any different than us growing a
Yeah.
lot of food.
And that's a basic
Yeah.
skill that every human being should have. Whether they decide to farm and homestead on their own in the future or not, it's up to them. But at
Mhm.
least we will have equipped them with the knowledge and know-how of how to do it.
Yeah. That's really important. That's how my dad brought me up also. We didn't have animals, but we had actually 3 gardens at one time going, and my mom did the canning. My dad and I did the gardening. I stayed out of my mom's way when she was canning because it was not pleasant to be around her. But that's what I learned growing up. And our kids in our family, for the most part, have been brought up the same way. Aaron and I lived in a little apartment in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania initially. George and I got married. The next year we had Taylor. We were living in an apartment, but in the country. And it did take us a few years. But like you, we were concerned about what our family was eating and we wanted to raise our children well. And so, yeah, there you go. There's kind of a logical progression of choices, isn't there?
Yeah.
When we're being really conscientious and thinking about what's best
Yeah.
for all of us. Yeah.
And as we were doing that, the initial goal, at least for me early on, was totally just focused on health, improving our health. But as we were doing it and spent time doing, I'm like, also the lesson and importance here isn't just health; it's about connection. We were
Yeah.
more connected to our food. We were more connected to one another, but we're also more connected to God in all this. It was all just a synergistic journey that we were on.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
seeing all of that. And that's one of those other aspects of homesteading that really goes beyond just what you eat and how you raise it. You see so much more benefit, don't you?
Sure do.
Yeah. And so eventually pursuing this lifestyle or a better life for your children and wanting to instill good values and all of that, it led you to this.
Yep. Yep. And that's a story in itself. Because as we were homesteading in the city and we were taking it more seriously and growing more, we got to the point where we were outgrowing the place, the spot that we lived in town. We also had neighbors. I wanted to have chickens. It was one of the things I was into bodybuilding. I was like, yeah, I want to start raising my own chickens now, having my own eggs. And then it was against the city ordinances where we lived. And we knew that we had neighbors that would definitely probably report us if we were to do
Probably.
that. And also we lived in town and I wanted to have a place where we wanted to have a place where our children could just go out and explore and be in God's creation and
Ah,
be able to have all those sensory experiences that we're designed to have. So we were like, we just need to sell it, our place, sell our home, sell everything, and move out to the country. But the biggest problem, the hurdle that we had was we really didn't have any money to do so. So one of the things that we decided to do was we were researching alternative housing. I think it was you. I'll let you share that because you're the
Well,
one that presented me with the yurt that you see here.
so I would joke with him when I would see in Mother Earth News the yurts and their Pacific yurts. There's always an ad, a full page ad of Pacific yurts. And
yeah.
I was at home. I was a stay-at-home mom. I think that time I had stopped doing massage because it was just too much with 2 kids that we had at the time. And I was just like, let's get on Craigslist. And I just searched for a yurt just to see what was out there. And it turned up there was a 30-foot Pacific yurt 2.5 hours from our house. So I hopped on the phone. I called Mike while he was at work. I was like, what do you think about a yurt? And I was like, I could ask mom and dad if we could put it up down on their property where there was an old house and everything that already had a septic tank and a well. And he's like, I'm not saying no, but just ask your dad. So the very next phone call that I made was to my dad. And I was like, hey, Dad, what do you think about Mike and I putting a yurt, tearing Nana and Pop's house down and putting a yurt down there and us living there? And he's just like, okay. I mean, I totally don't think he expected for us to even follow through with it. But I mean, that's how we got started. So that day I called or I emailed the lady about the yurt. And I think 2 days later, it was the day after Thanksgiving that year. We came and saw it, and it had been in storage. It had been put up in California for a couple years, and then they took it down. And we're like, well, I think they had it listed for $12,000. And I think all we had left on our home equity line of credit was $8,000.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And we said, would you take $8,000 cash? And she said yes.
Yep.
So we drove back home and got it out of the bank, and then came back on Sunday and picked everything up.
Yeah. And then as a part of that, when we decided we were going to sell, we had to sell our house at that point, and pretty much everything else that we owned, we sold that as well. And with that, we were able to, I also got a farm truck out of that. We were also able to move onto the property we're at now to set up our yurt. And that's when we really took our homesteading to the next level here.
Yeah.
I really, really love this part about your story, that you took the challenge. You didn't have a lot of resources. Probably, I'm sure you didn't think you had enough resources, but you made it work because you had a goal. And it was a good goal. And so, when we want to do something good for ourselves, our families, and others, and we trust on God, he can make things happen. And I think that that's kind of what I'm hearing from you guys is, I'm sure God had his hand in there somewhere, like that $8,000 for a yurt that I know they're not the most expensive alternative homes that you can do, but they're not cheap. And you guys,
but also this one came with all the floor joists and all the flooring too. So normally if you buy it from Pacific Yurts, it doesn't come with any of that. So that's another several $1000s of worth of, materials that you're going to have to buy. Like it was, God was like, here you go. And it did take us like a year and a half or so to get everything. The old house that we tore down, it was not livable. Nobody could live in it. Yeah. So we had to tear all that down and set everything up and go through all those processes. So it really did take us a year and a half to get it done. But like you said, like we had to trust in God. Like, well, you're bringing us this far and you're doing this for us. Yeah. So we just have to keep going forward.
And during that process, you're praying about it and asking, is this really what you want us to do? And then you see a little door open here, a little blessing here and there. They kind of guide you. But that doesn't mean that there's no trials, no challenges along the way, because there definitely was. Definitely a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Like the demolition job that we had to do, that I was hands-on with that. Yeah. On top of that, at the time, I was working like 2 jobs and coming down here just to come here and start demoing and trying to get it clean so that way we could set up the yurt.
And we were selling scrap metal like whenever we could.
Doing whatever odd jobs I could just to keep things going, just to keep a money flow going so that way we could keep it going. And when I think about back in the day when a lot of our ancestors had to travel out west or wherever people did come into this country, they had to do a lot of things much harder than that. They had to have grit. And then sometimes we in our lives, we are faced with those times where we need to do that. And that was one of the times that I had to apply some grit and get it done.
And I remember at the time, like we had listed our house for sale and we were getting nothing. Nothing. It didn't look like and it was, let's just say money was super tight right then. Yeah. So I remember like repainting the hallway and in the middle of the night when the babies were asleep and things like that, just because like it needed to be done. And
people say shoestring budget. We were on a kite string budget.
Yeah, that's pretty much. Pretty much
like that. Yeah.
But God saw us through it, and you know what? There's times that I bring it up to Lacie. It's like, what if we wouldn't have made that decision? Just looking back and all the open doors and awesome people that we've met like you, we wouldn't have met you guys.
Oh, I
but
know. Isn't that
it's
cool?
it sure
I don't
is.
think we would have ever started a YouTube
Don't
channel
think I would
if
have. There
we
was
had still lived in town.
I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't know what we'd be
yeah,
doing.
I don't either.
But it makes you even more thankful,
Mhm.
that thankful to God that He allowed us to be on this journey and to be able to
Yeah.
connect with awesome people like you all.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way. And
Uh,
actually, you guys were one of my first, maybe the first homesteading YouTubers that I'd ever met. Because when we
oh
did it, there was no one,
yeah,
almost no one. So, yeah, but I love how God does open doors, and you can see that and recognize it. And He also closes doors.
sure does.
Yes.
He sure does. Yep,
And
because one of
sometimes,
the doors that He closed was my previous career. I used to love being in the gym, love the fitness industry. I could live there. But it got to the point where He changed my heart during this journey where I got to honestly hated being there. And I remember just telling Lacie, I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I was a personal trainer on top of a bodybuilder and pro bodybuilder. And at the time, I loved my clients, loved what I did, never saw myself doing anything else until my heart was changed. And it was like, I don't want to be here again anymore. So on that journey, I was able to gradually start. I had worked for myself, and then God allowed me to be able to learn from some others where we started having some income streams here on the homestead. I gradually was able to do that, and then also YouTube came along to where we had a business that we were doing together as a family. I didn't need to work off the farm anymore, so that too was another
oh,
blessing that we're very thankful of.
yeah, that's really, really cool. And it's not just good for you, it's good for all of us too. Um, Sometimes I watch what you put out on YouTube or Instagram, or I see the stories, and I get encouragement as well as direction. And I know a lot of people do see what you're doing and learn from it. But the other thing that I get is good cheer. Like
Oh,
I watched the video about the bad heifer the other day, and I just laughed. I knew where you were going with it because I've been there and done that, but it was hysterical. And so you lift our spirits at the same time as you're providing some inspiration, instruction, and you're not afraid to share when you have failures that
yeah,
you
yeah,
learn. So
that's right.
yeah, that is
So
really cool. Well, and one of the things that I like, I'm going to jump back to this photo for a moment, is that it's a family affair. You've already alluded to that numerous times, but what you are doing as a family. Your children are involved, whether they're following you behind in a wagon and they're just littles, or as they get bigger and they're helping you in the garden or with let's see, there are a few things that they help you with. Um, they help with raising chickens, gathering eggs, butchering chickens, and there's a picture of Selah also making bread. So you do this together as a family. What are some of the benefits that you see from that? And I know
oh
there,
man, where do we start?
yeah.
I guess I would say, well, for me, it's all aligned with my spiritual walk with God as well, and knowing that God is God all about family. He loves family, and it's neat that this is a big part of our life. A major purpose of our life is family and the relationships that we have. It's not about the material thing. So, being able to have time each day as a part of what we do and the work we do, we also get to share life together. And yes, we have interpersonal issues sometimes, just like every human being.
Especially with kids.
Yes. And
Yeah,
some people they don't necessarily see that side on YouTube because we don't put that out
yeah,
there. Because
Yeah.
some people have left comments saying, your kids just do whatever you say. And I'm like, no, they're children, just like everybody else.
human beings.
And they're like, well, why don't you show that? I said, because I don't want anyone to show me at my worst to
Yeah.
everybody else.
Yeah,
So it's not their none of their business. But
Yeah.
that's what we teach them, how they respond to us on camera is how we want them to,
yeah, yeah,
that's what we expect them to do.
yeah. But you see,
Expectations, that's an important word. I
yeah,
think most parents don't have that concept down.
yeah.
Yeah.
And a couple years ago, it hit me that already at this point in my life, let me think of how I want to say this. That I have already spent with some of my kids double the amount of time with them than my parents did with me. And it's like, wow.
Up until the age you were 18,
Yeah,
like
up until
living in their
yes,
house.
like
Yeah.
you calculate that time that I was interacting with my family in our household. You got, of course, you got to subtract the time that they were away on the job and we were away at school. Just a small portion of the day each day. Then you total all that up, and by the time our kids are here, then I think it was around 8 years old or something. I had already spent more one-on-one direct personal time with them than I ever did growing up with my children, with my parents, as most people have with their children.
Yeah, that's super important. Most people, and I'm not, when I say this, I'm trying to be careful. Most kids obviously go to public schools. Some are able to go to maybe a good Christian school, and many are homeschooled like ours were and yours are. So I don't want to make parents feel bad who truly cannot do that.
Totally
Yeah.
understand. Yep.
That's not our intention at all,
No.
because we know like this world is hard
Yep.
to stay at home. Like you have to really sacrifice, and that is the big word right there. I just saw somebody in a Facebook group that I'm in. She's like, I didn't think I would want to, but I really want to stay home with my kids. And we've built this life on 2 incomes. How do we go down to just 1 income? And what I wanted to say is, like, you're going to have to get real uncomfortable.
Yep. Because especially we have a society that there's so many luxuries that we have compared to other nations and compared to times past in our history. So to live this kind of lifestyle, it does require sacrifices. Like we had to go down to one car. We had to stop eating out altogether for a long period of time.
I mean, there were probably 2 years plus where we didn't.
Yeah.
We couldn't.
Yeah.
We couldn't eat out at all.
Stop going to different types of sporting events or whatever you have. The sacrifices have to be made. If that's the goal, we decided that was our goal, that our family, there's a certain lifestyle that we wanted to live, that we felt called to live, and we got to be willing to do what needs to be done for that. It kind of reminds me there in the Bible, Jehonadab, where his family, they made some what seemed like extreme choices, that they were just going to be living in tents, and there would be goat herders and migratory family, and then God used them one of the reasons, as you kind of can see through the indications there, is that the forefather had foresight to see the way that the nation of Israel was going, and he decided, no, my family is going a different direction. And then years later, Jeremiah brings them to him, and God uses them as a powerful example of a family willing to do what's right and separate themselves.
Okay. Wow. I just got distracted for a moment. What I see also that you're talking about is my experience as well, that it was definitely a huge sacrifice for me to stay home. Before George and I got married, he actually made that decision. And so I was working at the time as a single mother, and he actually took care of Aaron and I for a bit until we had our wedding and got married. But it meant that, and I understood this, that it might be a really long time before we owned a house. We weren't going to be having any new cars or even more than one car. I think we just had one car in the beginning anyway. I drove an old beat up Volvo, a very old, I drive a Volvo now, but not an old beat up one. Well, anyway. And George started as a self-employed carpenter not too long after we got married. So just like you, when you decided to stay home also, Mike, and just start working together to produce not only food, but an income. I guess I just would want to encourage people, as I think you are, that for most of us, it can be done. Not for everyone, but
agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah. And if God really has placed it on your heart, even if circumstances seem impossible, pray about it and lean on him. You never know what could happen. So I don't want to say I'm not saying everybody should live this way, but if you feel like God is calling you to live a certain lifestyle, act on it and trust in Him to do it.
Yeah. And otherwise, allow God to use you wherever you are, however you are. But
Exactly
here
right.
you are raising this beautiful family. And like I found myself also as a young mom and George a young dad, we were very particular, me especially, about what our family ate. And I didn't know but a fraction of what I now know. But we were concerned about clean. We were concerned about nutrition. And you're not going to get that very well from a grocery store. So you've involved your family in producing wonderful food. And I have to throw this picture up here because this is one of my favorites, everyone.
Oh.
I love that. And obviously that is not something that many people can do. And I currently cannot, but I sure was happy that we were able to do that for nearly 30 years, for definitely 27 years. But that aside, you are involving your family in everything that you do, whether it be starting the seeds or harvesting the vegetables. You're doing it together. What are some of the wonderful blessings that you're seeing come specifically from being together as a family, working as a family? How do you see it affecting your children in particular?
One of the things is definitely seeing Sailor right here on the picture, our oldest. You see them equipped with skills at an early age and being able to do things like Sailor's able to make the family dinner. She does
Well,
it a
last
couple
night,
times a week and
yeah,
no problem at all. And seeing her being all of them being able to take on different age appropriate tasks and being able to fulfill them to the abilities that and ways that we've trained them in. That is
Yeah.
so refreshing and rewarding to see as a parent. You see them embracing those skills and then applying them, knowing that, hey, I've set them up to be less dependent on us and
Yeah.
more self-sufficient and being able to do them things themselves. We're empowering them, not hindering them. That's the goal. Is at least my goal as a parent. I feel you probably say the same.
Yeah.
Is our goal is to empower our kids, to teach them and help them to become fully functional adults that can be contributing members to society.
yeah. And
Amen.
well, like last night, Selah, she's been cooking dinner and she'll do pancakes and stuff like that. But last night she had a recipe and she was cooking chicken, and it was chicken that we have grown. She butchered, and she didn't go by a recipe, but like she made up the rest of it, and it was really good, and everybody loved it. So I mean, I don't feel like now there's a lot of 14-year-olds that can go out there and do that. And I think that I like that she takes that on and wants to try new things and that she can do it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I also love the moments. There's a number of moments where they actually have me wanting to tear up, and one's coming to mind right now when we were at the jamboree this past year, and I was leading the chicken and duck butchering class
Yeah.
workshop that we had hands on. Where we're teaching people hands on how to butcher a chicken and duck from start to finish, and I had mostly the dispatch station, we'll call it, where basically we're ending them, and then we pass them on to the evisceration station where Selah was there and taking the lead on it, and seeing her step up and take the lead and actually teaching people how to do the skill
Wow.
that I originally helped set her up with learning. Is just like I it's hard not to cry in those
And
moments.
she's teaching adults
Yes.
how to do this. And, most of the people, they came
Yeah.
through and they said, she was such a great teacher. She did it so well. And like, they was so nice to learn from her. So,
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
that's just so rewarding, that because our life isn't just about ourselves. I want to see people empowered and knowing that I had just a small part of helping to bless them, and seeing that now she's able to take that and pass it on and bless other people. Is
Yeah.
that's what it's about.
And there is a photo of her in the bottom left-hand corner butchering chickens. Her little brother is in the right-hand picture.
Yeah.
But in that picture on the bottom left, she's got a friend beside her, and I see someone else in the background, and you're all doing it together. And I'm presuming that she's helping guide and teach as well. Man, you're doing such a fantastic job here. I want to touch just briefly. You mentioned the word train, and that is something that I think parents, we need to really think about. We're training our children either by default or intention. And in my early years of parenting, I was totally lost. And so my kids were trained by default, and not in a good way then. But when we're bringing up our kids very intentionally, we're equipping them, empowering them. Exactly what you're saying. We're empowering them to be successful, to be a benefit to society, to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, and to be able to help others as well. And that's the kind of training that we as parents need to be doing for our children, instead of just what I unfortunately see so much today is parents that just, they just let things happen. I have, you see it, I see it. Someone was asking a question on a forum that I'm on just a few days ago. How do I deal with a picky eater? My kid's 7 years old and will only eat tacos and something or other. And I'm going, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
That's because the parents have trained, and that person doesn't even know who I am, or so I feel like I can say that as an example, but it is a very common example. Whether it be kids pitching fits, kids refusing to work, kids refusing to eat the food you put before them, kids, XYZ, you can go on and on. But if we want our children to be successful in life, and also to see God in things, and to be able to be fruitful and helpful, they need to see us doing all of those things, but we need to be training them intentionally. And you're doing that. And on your homestead, it's so much easier than sending your kids off to someone else for 8 or 9 hours a day, isn't it?
Sure.
Your kids, have they ever been?
It's still hard. It's still difficult.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But the influence that you want them to be around should come from you. Because if you're sending them to school, and I know not everybody can homeschool, but some people, you send them away, and there's so many more influences at school that you have to overcome once you come back home.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to say along those lines, if you're not able to homeschool or be the primary educator in your child's life, then that means you're going to have to be even more intentional about instilling your family values into them. I know when you work long hours away from the home, you're tired and all this, but you got to make sure that you make the time together count, maximize that time is extremely important. I like how you use the word intentional along with training. I don't think a lot of parents understand what the word training means. When I hear that word training, and I've read it in the scriptures, I also equate it to sports and my bodybuilding and personal training background.
Yeah.
When you are getting ready to prepare for an event, a competition, a game, or whatever, you go through exercises, drills, training to prepare you to be able to respond the way that you're supposed to respond. And that's what we're to do as parents. We're to train our children through drills, through exercises, through daily repetitions of the way that we want them to respond, the way we want them to respond, and the way that God ultimately wants us to respond.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think that training is discipline, or it's just all about, I need to discipline my child. That's an aspect or tool, but it's not training. Training is taking them through intentional things, like on the homestead, which I think you see in the Bible. It's a lot of agrarian principles and the lifestyle is highlighted. I think that's by design, because we're more suitable to be closer to God, connected to Him, connected to one another, connected with our food through this lifestyle. Once again, I understand not everybody can do it, but it does seem like that was the original intent for us to live.
I
And through
agree.
that, we're better equipped to be able to do these things.
Yeah, I agree. And when you're working alongside your children barefoot in the dirt, you're having conversations, you're wiping each other's
That's right.
sweat from your brow, you're picking each other up from the ground, you're encouraging each other, and they are learning so many valuable life lessons. They're untold,
Yeah.
untold valuable lessons, but you're also building a strong family bond. And that, to me, aside from the connection to God and the natural world that he gave us, is such an amazing benefit that we all should be striving for that. I'm so thankful that my children grew up helping me milk the cow, butcher chickens in the garden, and all of that stuff, just like you're doing. Because in that process, yes, we homeschooled, and I'm thankful for that. But even if we hadn't, just to be working together day by day, washing dishes together, sweeping the floor, doing the laundry, planting flowers, whatever it may be. But when you're working together continually, repeatedly, on a regular basis with your children,
Yeah.
you're forming a strong family bond. And hopefully a bond that is, and it should be, very healthy, and a relationship where your kids feel like they can trust you and trust each other.
Yeah. Totally agree with that.
I think if you were eating crappy food, it wouldn't matter just to have that, right?
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that. Yeah. And I also want to add that as we are working with our children, they're not the only ones learning the lessons. We're
Yeah.
learning even as we're teaching, because that's part of God's program too. He's wanting us to learn as well. And there's a lot of times where we have to learn to have more patience. When I teach a kid, one of the children, a new aspect of homesteading or a new skill or whatever any of us do as parents, of course they're not going to do it perfectly. They're not going to do it like you from the beginning. Michael Jordan or LeBron James, when they first started dribbling a basketball, they weren't slam dunking and they weren't the best. No, we have to build on them, and that's what we need to. We need to slow down in the society that's go go go. We need to slow down and have patience with them and work with them as they build and improve. And sometimes that's a challenge, I know, but
Yeah,
that's
I
something
know.
we
That
need to
was
strive for.
definitely hard for me. Patience was the most difficult thing, I think.
Yeah.
And I often failed. But having children and working together does help you to learn to build that. So I'd like to think that I got better over the years. But yeah, that familial relationship is wonderful. And I know that you guys are going to benefit for the rest of your lives just from that aspect. And it may mean that your kids come knocking on your door at 6 o'clock and say, "What's for dinner?" And they bring all their friends and you go, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
happens. I can tell you that
Yeah.
happens. Um,
I I want to have that relationship, continue to have that relationship with them. That even when we're older, we still enjoy hanging out together, and we look back at some of the things that we did, and that's what I want to have.
Well, and I've told them before, I was like, I want to be your friend whenever you're
Yeah.
older. Like, I want us to be friends. Like, I don't want what I'm telling you now to do is not because I'm trying to oppress you or anything.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to teach you. And we tell them that. We're like, look, we are teaching you how to be an adult.
Yeah.
We are teaching you how to function in this society.
Yeah.
So you're not going to jail.
Yeah.
I mean, we've told them that before.
Yeah. We said our
so you're
discipline is a lot easier than
Yeah.
going to jail.
Like spanking's way better than going to prison. So
that is for sure. Let's shift gears just a little bit then, and let's talk about some of the things some steps we can take that can lead us and our families down a better path. And even if you can't homestead, if you can't, well, I'm in that situation right now. We live on less than an acre in a community where the county has some very strict rules. I bend some rules, but sometimes even break. But what are some things that we can do and I'm going to bring up one of these slides right now, that can help your family to work together to grow a better food foundation, to build better, stronger, healthier bodies. So oftentimes we're talking to people, and I know you do too, and people are going, wow, I can't believe, how do you do that? Well, even before you moved into the country, into your yurt, you were doing these things. And we have a comment here from someone that's online with us right now, from Caleb, who's talking about how he says 12 years ago he raised plants in his bathroom apartment and hand pollinated his squash and peppers and tomatoes. And he had meat rabbits in his daughter's bedrooms.
Wow. That I like that. That's
Where
neat.
there's a will, there's a way.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So we can figure it out, right?
That's right. That is exactly right. One of the first things that comes to my mind is people just need to have a meal together, dinner together,
Yeah.
prepare that meal together, sit down and eat that meal together, TV off, talk to each other. That's one of the basic things that I think every household should be able to do. There's more than one person in your household, make that a goal. Just sit down and have dinner, family time together.
And
I
go
agree.
kind of along with that. So say you can't grow anything. Say you don't have any space to grow anything, but you want to improve your health. One thing that I have done with our kids is they know to read ingredients labels.
Yes.
They know to read them, and they know if they see high fructose corn syrup, it's like, nah. I mean, they already, Sayla's 14, Josiah's 12, almost 13. Those two especially, they know, because I'm like, okay, this is bad for us. This is bad for us. And teaching them at a young age. So maybe when they get to be in their teens, they're going to want to eat junk food. You can't control every single thing that they eat, but they have that base knowledge of, how is this affecting my body? And so maybe they will throw it to the wind for a while, but at least they can come back to having that knowledge later on if they do. But I think our kids make good choices even when we're not there.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the first things that you can do, and teach them that, eating food that doesn't have an ingredients list on it or a very short one is good for you. And then go and make a meal together and do the things. And even for desserts too, teach them how to make good desserts that are more helpful than going out and eating junk candy.
Yeah. I'd also add a side note to that also teach them that it's not some unpardonable sin if you eat something that's not like clean or whatever. So that way they just feel ultimately all just beating themselves up. Learn how to have balance in your life. Yes, we should strive to eat clean most of the time, but help them have a balance so they don't have some complex and feel like, go ahead.
And I know people that their kids, they were so strict for a long period of time. When their kids got out on their own, they just went wild and ate whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
And so I try to really be pretty balanced with that stuff, so it doesn't feel so restrictive that they're going to go the opposite direction.
I think that's another little side note. I think that's a problem that a lot of teens have with alcohol. They didn't learn how to use alcohol properly within the family context at around the mealtime. That once they go off to college or whatever, they're just like,
Yeah. No, I definitely am with you on that. My mother thought alcohol was absolutely evil no matter what, and I couldn't even cook with it in her presence. But we do drink some wine sometimes at dinner, and I give some to the children. I'm not talking little kids anymore, but
we're on the same page.
Yeah. I don't want it to be some adult goal to attain that, oh, wow, now you have alcohol, but teach them proper boundaries and proper uses, and it can have a place. Obviously, for some, you shouldn't touch it at all.
Exactly.
But I think we're going to be doing a show very soon about helping our kids to learn, help them to be successful with their health goals, with their diets and their eating habits. And that is important. I was the parent who was way too strict for a long time. And I started to make some changes about halfway through so that my kids didn't hit, 18 and go, wow, now I can eat anything.
Yeah.
Actually, I had kids, including Aaron, who went off to college and wanted good food. And Mom, they're stuck with this cafeteria that they were required to pay. Well, anyway, it was paid for, but two of them were actually asking me, Mom, I can't stand the cafeteria food. What can I do? And I would have things like raw milk delivered to them, or various things like that. And I was just very thankful that they actually wanted that. As they are coming into the teenage years, they're hitting puberty, and then you've got the acne stuff going on. It was wonderful for our kids to see that their friends were having all of these acne problems, but they didn't, unless they started eating a bunch of yucky stuff. And then they had appropriate consequences that was on their face. And so there were things like that for girls going through their cycles. We've seen young girls who couldn't function once a month, the girls who are throwing up or in bed, and our girls, it's pretty much a breeze. So they saw, they could, I didn't have to point it all out. They could see that what we were doing for their physical health had very real and not immediate, but almost immediate consequences. I also made my kids, most of the kids anyway, read Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Dr. Weston A. Price. That was part of their high school science health. They've had that for 1 year. I have one left, and I haven't given it to her yet. But when they can see how other people are versus how they feel, and whether it be just in nutrition and physical health, but also the family dynamics, what you're doing with your kids is so profoundly beautiful and different than most. And I don't know how many other family members you have who might be living the standard American lifestyle that your kids can see, oh, well, they have these problems or those problems. Are you seeing some of that?
Yes,
and
we
are your
are.
kids seeing it?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's sad, but it's also opportunities to teach them.
Yeah.
Well,
And they also see, like, working on the farm, like Selah's strong.
Yeah.
I mean, just that they can move 50-pound bags of feed and all. So they see that doing that repetitive is strengthening their bodies as well.
Yeah, but they're getting natural exercise in, farm strength exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. And even though I know that they are normal kids that will fight with each other a fair amount, as they get older, they'll be one another's best friends. And so there will be that aspect as well. Back to the idea of doing whatever you can do. I've often thought, just like Caleb here, that if I had to live in an apartment, I'd have a balcony and I would be growing some vegetables and some herbs. I would probably hide some quail. That's actually my next thing here is quail, because there are no actual restrictions because the county hasn't thought of that.
There we go.
Yeah. So no, I've just thought about those things. Do whatever you can possibly do. And I think all of us can at least put a few pots in the windowsill to grow some veggies and herbs.
Exactly right. Microgreens is one of the easiest things that a lot of people can grow. You can grow radish microgreen seeds in the kitchen window in as little as a week. So there's a lot of different things if you just kind of think outside the box. A lot of people will just like look on Instagram and they have this picture perfect thing of what they want to do, but you really sometimes you really just got to analyze what you have and be content with what you have and do the best with what you have.
and maybe watch less Ballerina Farm and more Mike's Fit Farmer. People often bring that up. Oh, I watch. Oh, yeah, I've seen that once. And yeah, well, if you can afford to have a housekeeper and landscapers or whatever, then fine. But that's not most of us. And
No.
Our whole motto for years has been do what you can where you are.
Yeah.
That's a great motto. I really like that.
Yeah.
And don't let other people dictate what you can and cannot do necessarily. We do obviously live in a world with laws that we have to be careful, but you can figure it out. Caleb figured it out. Thank you, Caleb.
That's awesome. Good job, Caleb.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we do what we can. And even if it's a few pots in a windowsill or growing microgreens, I'll be in touch with Mallory pretty soon. I want to talk to her actually about growing microgreens, and that'll come up, folks, but not quite yet. But there's something that all of us can do. And even if you don't have the ability to do things like you're doing or like my family did years ago, I think, well, let's come down to the most important common denominators. And you've talked already about having dinner together, praying together.
Exactly right.
There's some other things, some real core concepts that we all can take away here and remember to help our own families to grow strong and healthy.
Just think about just connecting together. It's interesting that we live in a society that is more connected than ever before with technology, but we're the most disconnected probably ever relationally than we've ever been. But we really have to be just intentional with all that. You mentioned that word earlier, intentional, even about with our connections. You go, every time I do a little errand, I'm just like, all right, I'll bring at least one of the kids with me. And like, come with me. We'll talk about something. I'll maybe make you feel uncomfortable about something. but that's the goal. It's like, I got this limited time with you. Let's maximize it and do the best we can with it. And that's things we need to shoot for. And I'm so glad that you're having these conversations. I wish that there were more things like this at some of the events that we go to, some of the conferences. They're focused on a lot of the homesteading how-to, but the family part sometimes is missed. Parents and we need to be equipped with how to have better family lives. These conversations need to happen more. So I commend you for bringing this up in this conversation here. And I just hope that we see more of these things, because we all need to be equipped and learn from each other, and iron sharpen iron, so we can all improve and have better lives.
Well, and also, like, even a husband and wife, just say you don't have any kids.
Yes.
I mean, being around each other 24/7 sometimes can get a little punchy every now and then. And so learning how to work through things and being there for one another, and, knowing whenever maybe you need to go to on a drive by yourself, or go to the feed store by yourself, or something like that. Yeah, like everybody needs their little reset. So I think, because I have heard of people, doing the homestead life and their marriage falls apart.
Yep.
Which there were a lot of signs probably before that ever happened, but you really have to work on yourself and your relationships whenever you're together all the time.
Yeah. And I would say that those relationships that happened with, if they would have not been homesteading together, they would have still been together a longer period of time, but it delayed when those problems would have come to a head. Because when we get to spend a bulk of our time away from each other, it doesn't force us to deal with problems. We can kind of just get away with it. I'm not saying you don't ever take a time out and get a breather, but eventually you're going to have to deal with those problems. You're going to have to work through it together. Once you get through it, then that helps make you closer together as a family. And another little thing that I wanted to add to that people could do that can't, say they live in a bunker or something and they can't grow even something in the windowsill. Maybe go out, volunteer at a nearby farm, homestead, and get that experience that way. That will be a benefit to that farm, that homestead, but it'll also give you the opportunity to have that hands-on experience that maybe you're craving and can't have.
And fresh food too. I mean, maybe they can't pay you. Maybe they can trade you in produce. So that's another way that you can do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of knowledge that comes that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, this has been such a good conversation, and it's inspiring me. The wheels are turning to, I want to continue on this vein with others as well. So we focus so much on health and physical wellness, interweaving the spiritual wellness in there. But the parenting thing has been on my mind a lot lately too. I wish I would have had better mentors when I was a young mom, and our culture has just kind of taken a nosedive. So maybe we need to, not maybe, we do need to kind of go into that a little bit further later. And I do have a couple from Minnesota that I'm going to be interviewing in the spring that do help parents learn how to be better parents. And so we'll bring that up later. But I'm so glad to have this conversation with you, because it's not just about growing food or being self-reliant. Those are really, really important things that few people really have anymore today. But it's also about building that strong family bond and the connection to God through doing hard work, appreciating the natural world that He created. You've got that down. I understand it. We want to share that with others and expand from there. So with that, I'm going to bring this to a close. And before we sign off entirely today, I'll bring you back in just a moment to say goodbye, Mike and Lacie. I want to mention that our friends at Farm on Central in Ohio have a good deal going on right now. And Michael Kilpatrick is my friend who owns the farm with his wife, and they will be speaking. We'll be interviewing them pretty soon. I'm going to probably wait until March before I schedule them, just because then it's springtime. But I want you to be thinking like I am, of what can we do? What can we get started now? Or even just what can we plan? So Farm on Central, and there's a link to the website in our show notes. They're offering our viewers $5 off an order. They have all kinds of things that will be available come spring, including cuttings of elderberry, ginger, turmeric, berry crops, willow crops, all kinds of things. I actually have quite a few things planted in my yard that I have purchased from them, including almost all of my elderberry. They have great products. They farm sustainably, cleanly, and they're a really wonderful family business. So check them out. Maybe get some dreaming and some planning going on for the springtime. I am working on planting kind of a permaculture farmstead here on my less than an acre. So I have planted elderberry, as I mentioned, aronia berry, autumn olive, aronia, I may have already said that. And I think I bought an apple tree from them as well. But they have a lot of different good permanent. My mind is going blank as the dog is barking in the background. But foods, plants that you can plant for food and for beauty. God gave us things to sustain us physically and spiritually, and part of all of that is beautiful as well. And so I really enjoy what I have purchased and planted from the Kilpatricks and Farm on Central. So remember, $5 off an order now. They also have a great deal on organic almonds. So check that out. That also will be in our show notes. So back to Mike and Lacie. We want to thank you again for your time. This has been just a wonderful conversation. And I'm so glad. I can't wait to see you again. And I want to just ask quickly before we sign off, is there going to be another Homesteaders Jamboree this fall?
We would love to. There's a lot of details and things we have to work out, whether we're going to have the same location. But for us, we greatly enjoyed having the event. It was so neat to be able to equip people with hands-on skills that we felt that after the event, they could go home and apply the next day. That was our goal. So, yeah, we plan to do that. So just stay tuned and for updates on that. But yeah, we hopefully you can join us again.
Yep, I would love to. And while we're at it, God's Good Table is also having another event at Melvin's Farm to Fork near Roanoke, Virginia, the last weekend of April. Once again, the focus will be on natural and non-toxic healing modalities and always looking to God's word. So look to our website for that. Tickets are still discounted, but they are selling. So you'll want to check that out and buy tickets for yourself, your spouse, your family. And we hope to see you then at Melvin's Farm to Fork. And I hope to see you at Melvin's Farm to Fork that last weekend of April 25th, 26th, 27th. All right. Thank you, everyone. Next week, come back as we have a conversation with Billy Bond, Billy and Michelle. I'm really excited about that. So they're also part of the Homesteading for Jamboree, good friends of Mike and Lacie and Sophie and Tim Ang. So we'll be interviewing him next week, and I've been waiting anxiously for that. So I think you'll all benefit from that.
Yeah, they're great.
You like him too, don't you? He and Michelle, I'm so impressed with them. They're really good people. So, all right, that's it for now. We'll see you next week, everyone. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.